Hello, and welcome to another year of Crafts Gothtober live show. This time I'm joined by Kelly and Cara. Would you like to introduce yourselves and your channels?
Sure. I'm Kelly from Cozy Reader Kelly, and yeah, I haven't been filming a lot in the last 6 months, but yeah, I do film about books, but now I've added crafting, so this is perfect. My last video, I decided I'm just gonna start adding in all my crafting projects into my kind of wrap-ups or currently reading, so a little bit of both.
Yeah, I love it. So hi everyone, I'm Cara. My channel is Wild Book Garden. I read a lot of different things, all over the place, and I host a classics book club, I co-host. I also created Middle Grade Magic, which is a middle grade themed readathon, of course. And yeah, I do a lot. Currently, I am catching up on some of the many wrap-ups that I need to do for this year. So that is, I guess, one thing you can expect from my channel is it might be extremely late, but I will get to it.
I love that. I'm also behind on wrap-ups, so I absolutely feel you on just catching up with the reading.
It's once you get a little behind, it's so easy to that was 6 months ago.
The time flies. And hello, welcome. We are going to be sprinting, crafting for an hour-ish, maybe a little bit more, and we'll just be casually chatting in between doing so. What are you going to be crafting?
Cara, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. So I have a couple of projects that I am trying to finish before our weather changes too much because they are more, I guess, more summer appropriate. For those who don't know, I live in California, so I have to be kind of creative when it comes to what I knit, because that's my primary craft. And so I am working on a sleeveless top right now. And I'm actually getting pretty close to being done with the body. And then I can start doing the front and back. And another nice thing about doing sleeveless or short sleeve things is they're quicker because you don't have to do all the sleeves and everything. But I mean, that's not why I chose to do this one, but it's a nice bonus.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'm also knitting. I'm not as experienced a knitter as Cara, so I am taking a class on making a hat so I could learn some more skills. So I had finished the rim of the hat, and now I'm working on the body of the hat. So most of the hat is stockinette, and then there's a little section that's garter stitch. So that's what I'm doing. I have to get to, before my next class, to where we start doing the decreases. So I have to be 6 inches. Okay. And I am not close to 6 inches.
Well, and that's awesome that you're already doing a project that's in the round. Because I was mainly a self-taught knitter. And so I put off doing that stuff for a really long time.
I love that you're speaking in this language. I don't knit, so this is a completely different language. I recognize some of the knits, the stitches from you created the book tag that's books and knitting. So I feel like I've heard people talking about different pattern types, but I don't have any idea.
That was one of my aims, is just sort of gradually introducing people to knitting words.
Well, I only learned some of these words recently, so that's why I'm I've been trying to take classes. We have a local yarn shop, and it's just so beautiful to go in there. And so then I'm well, if I take a class, I get 10% off the wool and other yarns. And this one's wool, but so
that's really good motivation, to give a discount to people who go to the classes as well.
Yeah, that is really cool.
I am not a painter, but I am painting because I got sent some stuff with some books, and one of them was this mini canvas with let me grab it, this easel as well.
Oh.
And I thought it came with 3 colors, which are red, orange, and pink. I'm not a great artist, so I just thought I'd paint like a sunset and then write something and put it on my bookshelf as a decoration. So I thought,
It's really cool.
Yeah, I missed everything you just said because my internet is once again deciding it does not like crafting sprints.
Oh no. I'm painting a mini canvas.
Okay.
To make it look like a sunset, which comes with a mini easel. I'm going to put it on my shelf, even though I'm not a natural painter.
That'll be cute.
I hope it will turn out okay. Let's see, what are other people doing? Danielle, I wanted to bake an apple dessert today, but it's too tired, so I might just chill tonight and bake tomorrow. Very valid. I have not baked in a little while, but I actually feel like it's the season for baking, so I need to get on that again. Do you guys bake as well?
I do bake, not super consistently, but as you said, we're getting into kind of the perfect season for it, so maybe I need to make more of an effort because I do enjoy it when I do it. I'm just like, I don't know, I guess I don't want to say lazy, but I prioritize other hobbies and interests.
That is fair.
Yeah. I mean, I like to eat baked goods. So I want to bake more, but I feel like there's so much precision in baking and I feel like I'm not very good at it. So I need to practice more, but then I'm like, oh, it doesn't turn out the way they showed in the picture. So I do I just had some like bananas going bad. So I did bake some like, it was like a baked oatmeal casserole thing with like berries and banana and oats and everything. So that was like something I made.
Yeah. We would always do banana bread when our bananas were starting to get a little too ripe.
I love a good banana bread. But yeah, my sister is also the one who loves to eat baked goods but does not bake. So there's a good combination.
You're a good team, yeah.
Yeah. And you're right, preparation time, like crafting takes time. You think about it, you get in the mood for it, and then the time is right.
Yeah. Well, and it is like an enjoyable thing. It's supposed to be like something that you have fun doing, and so it's a good thing to wait until you're like actually relaxed and ready to do it.
Yes, it's always best to do that. Ellen is coloring a William Morris coloring book that feels very nature-ish. That sounds very soothing. And has just made some soup. In terms of the baking, Ellen made a pear and ginger loaf cake recently that was very autumn.
Sounds delicious.
I only make loaf cake because it doesn't really matter how they look. That is valid.
I think that's delicious.
Yes. I think that's why I like doing things like apple crumble and banana bread as well, because there's no real presentation finish for them.
Yeah. One of the main things that I bake is pies, and it's not, I don't know, like I never, if somebody else brings a dessert or something, I never look at it and I'm like, doesn't look as nice as it should. But when I do it, I feel so bad if like the crust doesn't look right or it doesn't like turn out quite right, even though like you can't tell and it tastes fine, and I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't even like notice that it looks a little different. And it's especially hard because like pie crusts is one of those things where I swear you can do everything exactly the same, and some days it's like, what if I just don't work? Like
I once tried to make I think it was a pumpkin pie with like homemade pie crust, and it was my very first time, and in hindsight I don't think it turned out that badly, but I was so unhappy with how it turned out.
Well, and especially like a pumpkin pie is kind of a unique pie I don't know, structure, like, and you've got like a graham cracker crust instead of like a regular one, so I feel like it's a tricky pie to do as well.
And did you cook your pumpkin, or did you use pumpkin puree?
I cooked it as well.
That's
it was
a lot.
long process. It was a long process.
I won't make pumpkin pie anymore because the one time I did that and I cooked my pumpkin and I did all of this effort, and then I had made multiple because it made a lot and gave it to other people, and then I had to call everybody and tell them don't eat the pie because it turns out that I had switched salt and sugar.
Oh no.
And so I'd spent all the time making all these pies and giving them to people and realized that they're not edible.
Oh no, that's some like Anne of Green Gables, like.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bad. So now I'm like, nope, no more pumpkin.
Yeah, that would be. I would have the same reaction. Like, well, I am never doing this again. Great. Like,
I tried. Speaking of Anne of Green Gables, I'm gonna disappear in a second because I didn't bring any water and I need to change color. But what are you guys currently reading at the moment?
Callie, do you want to take this one
Sure.
first?
I'm reading this book, Lighthouse Witches. I'm almost done. I think I have like 20 pages left. It's like kind of a mix of like, you know, witches, thriller, gothic, folklore kind of stuff. So it's the whole October feeling.
Yeah. Is it I don't know, like, is it fast paced? Like, is it really like keeping you motivated to read it?
It is at this point. I feel like it might have been it was a little slow at the beginning, but now it's like in the point of like, I need to know what's happening.
Yeah.
And like, I know, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it like a twist, but I know like what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But it still is like, how is it going to turn out? Who's going to, are they going to be? Is everybody going to come out alive on the other end and stuff like that? So I am kind of like curious what all happens. So it is getting me absorbed. I feel like it took me a little bit at the very beginning, but then moved along. I'm also listening to the third book in the Diviner series, which is also a really good October feeling book. Very spooky, ghosty stuff going on.
Is it as good as the first two?
I'm liking it the same amount. I think I feel like this whole series is like a 4-star series for me. Like, I'm really enjoying it. I get absorbed. I like the characters, but they're just really long.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, they're not quite 5 stars because I'm like, I feel like they could be less than 22-hour audiobooks, you know?
Yeah. An entire day of your life will be like.
Yeah. But I do enjoy them, and this is like the second one I've read in a row, and they're very long. And last time it took me like a week to finish it, and I haven't been like reading a ton, so I feel like they do pull me in and keep me going.
Yeah.
I read the first one and I think I felt very similar, where I was like, I really like this. It is just quite long.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like those really big ones, I'm like, well, I felt like that with her other series. I had read her first series. What was that, like The Great and Terrible Beauty or whatever?
Yeah.
I felt the same way. I'm like, I feel like this is long just for the sake of being long and not really like necessarily long. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably could be trimmed back a little bit, but
yeah.
I like this one better than I liked that series though.
That's good.
I'm sort of like getting back into the swing of reading consistently as well. Like, it's just been like, I don't know, especially the last few months has been a weird reading year for me, which is fine. It's just like, it's weird to not be reading consistently, but I'm kind of like just starting to get back into it. And I just finished The God of Good Looks by Brienne McIvor, and it is so good. And it's one of those books, like, everybody was talking about it the year it came out. I think it won like several very serious book awards, or it was like long listed or short listed or something. So like, I had heard people talk about it. But I think this is an example, like, I guess it'd be considered like a literary romance. And normally my irritation with the literary label is more directed towards, like, it makes genre fiction sound like it doesn't have literary merit, which is ridiculous. And I still feel that. But I also, after reading this book, I feel like calling something literary blank also does a disservice to that book, because it sort of makes it sound like generic when it isn't, in my opinion. And maybe that's just like how, I don't know, how I had heard some people describe it. I don't know. But it was so good, and the characterization was so good, and the story was really interesting, and it was like the way that it had all this commentary on like beauty standards while also not like punishing women who enjoy things like makeup. Like, it was so good. And I'm like, I don't think anybody, for the most part, mentioned any of the things that made this book good. You know, it was just like about it being a more serious version of a romance, which is very condescending. And again, also kind of like insulting to this book too.
And there's lots of serious romances out there.
Yeah. It's just like, it's a weird thing. Like, and I don't usually use like the literary label, because I just feel like it doesn't actually help, and it doesn't actually tell you anything about what a book is like. And so this book is a good reminder that goes both ways. You know, it's not just like an insult to genre fiction, which I think it is, but it also sort of makes books that are like so interesting and like layered and fun. Like, it was really funny, and no one had said I don't think that it was funny until Kier reviewed it. So anyway, that's one I finished recently that I loved. It's set in Trinidad. I highly recommend it. It does deal with eating disorders and a lot about like class, and there's sort of a like emotionally manipulative relationship that is very prominent in it. So with those caveats, I would definitely recommend it. It's so good.
I have it waiting for me on my shelf, so I'm glad to hear this, because I feel like I haven't heard that many people speaking about it. So this is good.
Yeah. I feel like it was one where when it was published, I don't know when that was, a year ago, 2 years ago, it was like there was this big buzz of like people talking about it because of the book award season. And then after that, I hadn't really heard anyone mention it recently. And I had kind of like forgotten about it. And it wasn't even necessarily on my radar until Kier from Kier the Scrivener reviewed it in a way that like actually communicated some of the things that it did really well. And I was like, this sounds like exactly my thing. And I loved it.
That's great. I love that you loved it, especially as you're like feeling a bit rocky about reading this year, and then it just came in and stormed. I can see Ellen says, joined a Lipfic Facebook group last week, and I don't want to dunk on the founder because managing things like that is work and service, and I appreciate it. But wow, they are very tightly strung about what counts as Lipfic. And it's very funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can like there's different kinds of reading. You can read for fun and it still be well written, and you can read for like, you know, sadness and depth of feeling, and it and it being too overly written, and you're like, well, I'm not. So yeah, it is weird.
And I think there's also this sort of bias, and I know I fall into this sometimes, but there's this sort of like feeling we have that something sad or like upsetting is like inherently a higher quality emotion, you know, like than something that is more positive, which is like a very silly thing if I think about it. But yeah, it's like we sort of, I think we give stories more credit, I think. And I think that is starting to change a little bit now. But in general, I feel like we sort of give writing more credit when it's more depressing or when it's like focused on negative emotions, because we think that those are more true. And that's like not the case. Like I feel like anytime there's like a book tag question or something, and this is like what you were saying, Kelly, where it's like, do you read for enjoyment or for like, I don't know how they would say it, but like expanding your mind, you know, like learning or something. And it's like, I think almost every book I read contains both. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think makes a good book is if it does both. Like it doesn't lessen something's quality if you enjoy reading it. And just because you enjoy something, it doesn't mean that you're not learning from it.
Yeah. It's so funny. I had a girl, like some family members, but this is like a family member's girlfriend. They were living with us during the pandemic, and she was like fresh out of college. And I was reading a lot of comfort reads at that time. Made sense. And I was like recommending some to her, and she's like, well, I just can't see spending my time reading just like entertainment. You know, I'd rather it be like something I'm learning from. Like, so they were reading a lot of nonfiction or classics when they were living with us. And then like, let's fast forward to, what was that, 4 years ago? And now she's like plowing through all of Sarah J. Maas's books. And I'm like, girl, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, came off your high horse.
Yeah. Going to the rest of us.
That you can just have a good time.
Yeah.
When you're reading, if you will.
Yeah. I feel like also it's interesting because I've seen some discussions like around publishing about how people just are enjoying fantasy or genre fiction a bit more, especially if it has a hopeful lens or a happily ever after. And that because of what is going on in the world today, people are looking for those happy ever after stories and the happier tones. And so now they're getting more merit when something has a happier ending. And I just find it very interesting.
It is interesting.
Like how time and what's happening in real life kind of affects how much more we give certain storylines or certain genres.
Well, one of the many things I love about the Ray Bear series by Jordan A. Fueco is that I feel like it is very honest about the problems of the world, how bad things are or how bad they can get. And then it's like, so do something about them. And there are people who are doing something about them. And to me, that doesn't feel like an overly sappy message. Like I've been talking to friends about this a lot, actually, is like, you know, having hope that things can get better is actually like an essential part of trying to make the world better. Because if you don't think it's going to help, why would anybody do something, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You need to have some motivational elements there.
Yeah.
Also, did I tell you that I read Ray Bear?
Oh, exciting.
And I loved it. I loved it so much. I actually got the sequel ASAP. So I could...
Yes. Good.
It was very good. I see that Daniela says, I chatted to a former classmate. We studied English together. And I said I didn't read a lot of Czech literature because most of it deals with trauma or is depressing, really. And he found that understandable. Yeah.
Reasonable, it says.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like... Oh, actually, Olivia Vendi, you were just mentioning that you read Ray Bear recently. I reread Beloved recently. And it was so good. Like, I really do think, and I kind of thought this going into it, because it's for our classics club. And the only other time I read it was when it was assigned to us in school in 9th grade. So we were 14 reading that book, and I just don't think...
No.
Like, I'm sure we got some things out of it, but I definitely don't think we could really appreciate what she was doing at that age. But reading it as an adult. What's that?
It's too much for like 40, like
teenagers. Like it just really, I just, in my opinion, 14 was much too young to be reading that.
I would agree.
Yeah, like it's a lot. I mean, even reading it as an adult, it's a lot, and it's done well. Like Toni Morrison is so intentional about the way that she talks about these horrific traumas and the way people are trying to deal with them. Like, it's intentional. It's not just there for, like, I don't know, like shock factor or anything. But that's still, like, 14, I don't think is a good age for that. And it's also a bummer because, like, that negative experience put me off reading Toni Morrison for, like, the rest of my reading career up until, like, 1 or 2 years ago when I finally read Recitative, which I loved. And that was sort of one of the things that was like, okay, I should try something else by her. So yeah, exactly, Ellen. Like, I would not recommend reading Toni Morrison as a 14-year-old. Like,
even like, barring the subject matter, it's quite a difficult reading experience as well. So it's just way too much for that young.
Yeah.
Way too much.
But this time around, I thought it was excellent, which obviously, like, Toni Morrison's one of those authors where I sort of feel like, who am I to review Toni Morrison? But I did think it was fantastic. Like, I listened to the audio version that she narrates, and that was incredible.
I need to reread it that way.
It is so good. And there were, like, so many times where, like, I was listening to it and I would have to, like, stop and take a minute to be like, that sentence, like, that just was so good. So
I think it's important, though, that we still review these things, because then we remind people, oh, maybe you should give this a chance as an adult when you have, like, more world experience and understanding of the world, as opposed to what you were, like, forced to read as a teenager. So it, like, reminds you that, oh yeah, going back to a classic is actually, like, can be really good experience in adulthood.
Yeah. And, like, kind of like going back to what we were talking about with, like, serious literature can also be, I don't want to say entertaining, but it can have, like, enjoyable parts of the experience as well. Is, like, I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people are understandably put off reading classics, because people only ever talk about them as, like, this is a classic, you know, this is great literature, and they don't say anything about, like, what kind of story it is or, like, what the characters are like. And it's like, just because something is a classic, it doesn't mean that it suddenly doesn't have the other pieces of a story, you know? So
I feel like Shakespeare especially, like, people talk about how difficult it is to read and all of that, but it's like, this is just a love story, and loads of them are comedies. And
I was like, so speaking of, like, Gothtober and Gothic literature, when I read The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, I was like, this is just like soap opera with a little bit of scary in it. And I'm like, this isn't, like, high society, like, literature. Like, this is, like, totally, like, drama city. And I'm like, why aren't people talking about that? How fun it can be to just read classics. They're not all doom and gloom.
Right. Have you seen any of the memes about, like, the Dracula book? Where it's like, it's really true. Like, somebody said that, like, describing the plot of Dracula sounds like somebody making up the plot of Dracula. Like, it sounds so bonkers because, like, most of our cultural knowledge, and certainly mine before I read the book, was, like, just sort of general Gothic vampire stories. And, you know, it was kind of, like, spooky, and, like, maybe it was a little campy, but it was, like, it was supposed to be, like, scary vampires, you know? And there is that in the book, but it's also just so wacky. Like, there's, like, even just the cast of characters is just ridiculous. There's, like, this random cowboy who shows up, and, like, no one really knows why, but they're like, you're on the team now, let's go. And even, like, the beginning of the book is so silly because Jonathan Harker is at Dracula's castle, and of course he doesn't know that Dracula's a vampire, but he, like, sees Dracula out the window just, like, crawling down the wall like a spider, and he's like, huh, that's weird. Anyway, like, it's like no suspicions. Like, it's so fun. It's, like, such a fun book. So
see, now you're making me want to read Dracula.
It's a good time. It is my favorite of the monster classics, if that helps. But
I do love it. I do love it. That is just logistics.
What are you reading, Olivia Savannah?
So this morning I finished my book that I have been slowly buddy reading for 2 months, which was A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. And I loved it.
I did too. I
loved it. Yeah. And I think that was one of Dickens that had quite a lot of humor, and he can be wordy, but he wasn't as wordy as he was in Great Expectations, so that worked better.
Agreed.
Just great characters and great writing. So I really liked A Tale of Two Cities. And I'm still also reading Model Home by Rivers Solomon for Gothtober. I think I've only got 50 pages left, so I'm hoping to finish it this weekend. But it's like Rivers Solomon is just really good at what they do, and I went in expecting it to be like a haunted house, and we spend a lot of time in the house, but it's actually quite metaphorical, and it's talking about generational trauma and racism, as they're the only Black family in this neighborhood full of like white rich people. And yeah, now it's all coming together at the end. I'm just like, oh, this is Rivers Solomon's mind is very genius.
Yeah. I distinctly remember when I finished Tale of Two Cities, which was also sort of a casual buddy read I had done with a friend. But I very clearly remember finishing it super late at night and just like curling up on the couch and crying a little bit.
Just being like, yeah, I'm gonna
so you know it was good, because I'm like crying curled into the fetal position.
That was very good.
I knew the story. I've seen the movie. I know the plot, and I'm still just like,
yeah. Oh, did you say? I didn't. You know, I finished it and I thought there must be a film of this, but I don't know any film of this.
Yeah, it was a long time ago that we watched it. I think it was like in one of my history classes in high school. It was like near the end of school, and so they were like, this is sort of vaguely historical and everyone's tired from exams, so we're just gonna show this movie. So there was I think it was like, even at that time, I think it was a little bit of an older movie, but there is at least one film version out there. There's probably a bunch.
I need to check it out. Ellen says that they know very little about A Tale of Two Cities, so looking forward to reading it. And I also knew basically nothing other than it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. That's all I knew. And I think it's good to go in with that, because it's really good, and I feel like it's one of the classics that hasn't been spoiled all over the place. It's nice.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I actually don't know much about it either, and I haven't read it yet, so maybe that'll have to be soon, because I haven't read much Dickens in adulthood. I read Great Expectations in high school and hated it at that time. But then I read Christmas Carol a few years ago, and I was like, this is hilarious.
It's so funny. Yeah. Yeah. I have had like a very confusing reading experience with Charles Dickens, because I have hated 2 of his books and I have loved 2 of his books, because we had to read. Well, first I read David Copperfield by myself when I was in school, and I hated it. Also wonder if maybe I was understanding the writing, but I don't know that I was like understanding the story as much as I would have if I had read it later. But I don't want to go back, because I really didn't like that one. So I hated David Copperfield. We also had to read Great Expectations in school, like in high school, and I hated that. And so I was like, maybe I just hate Charles Dickens. And then eventually I read A Tale of Two Cities, which was only a few years ago, and I loved it. And I read A Christmas Carol a few years ago, and I loved it. So I'm like, I am 2 versus 2. I don't know how I feel.
What's next? You guys read classics, so like, not classics early, because I guess we also read classics in school, but you read classics that I wouldn't put to teens, like A Great Expectations. That's so horrible for teenagers to read.
I know.
I agree. And like, we had to read Grapes of Wrath, which I also think would be better when you're older.
Yeah.
As a teenager, you're just like, well, this is just depressing. And you're obviously it's during the Depression, but like, I don't think you get being a parent and having to like care for a child when you have nothing and all, like you don't get that when you're 15.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
The John Steinbeck we read was Of Mice and Men, which
Yeah,
I
too.
hated.
Oh, I loved it.
Oh, I love yeah, I was gonna say I love a mice.
Maybe I'd like it more as an adult. I just remember at the time I really, really hated it. And I also, like, I don't think I had the vocabulary to communicate why it bothered me, but I especially really hated the way that the one female character was, like, used in the story. And I don't know. But then, like, later I read East of Eden, which I still had very mixed feelings about, but there were some parts of it that I loved. And there are some lines of that book that I'm going to remember forever. So maybe I'm also confused about John Steinbeck. I don't know. I still think it's embarrassing, though, that he's our, like, great American writer. It's like, Olivia Savannah, you guys have, like, Shakespeare and Jane Austen. We've got John Steinbeck, Mark Twain. No, thank you.
I think that like Octavia E. Butler should be our great American writer. I mean,
I would love that. Yes.
That's a good shout.
Yes.
Somebody asked me the other day, he was like, if you could recommend me a book right now, what would it be? And I was like, well, I don't know anything about you. And I was like, you should read Octavia E. Butler. I was
just like in general, yeah. It's
like,
good.
I was like, and then I was like, read her short story collection, because then you at least get like a snippet, but not go full on, like, you know, she gets pretty intense. So like maybe don't go like on some of her books that maybe would be a shock to start in on, but like start to get in slowly and realize that you just love her concepts, and then you can go for it.
Yeah.
And on the path of Octavia, you've also got like Nella Larson and The Color Purple.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go down that route, you've got some great ones.
Yeah. It is certainly not an accident that a lot of the like great American authors that people talk about are white.
Yeah.
So
it happens, unfortunately.
It does.
I also see people saying only read Beloved or only read Sula. And if you want to read more Morrison, I think I recommend what Cara did with Recitative, which is like very short but really, really effective. And then you should read it and read like an essay or an afterword about it, and then you'll just be like, and now I'm going to read everything that Toni Morrison has ever written.
Yeah. The version I read, like, it was the audiobook, and Zadie Smith did this sort of like introduction or like essay at the beginning. And I think that was a really excellent way to experience it, because it's not a story that can really be spoiled. Like, it's not like, that's just not something that you have to worry about with it. So having sort of a lens to think about it with was really, I think, helpful and interesting. And yeah, it's just, it's such a smart story. And like everybody I've talked to almost who has read it, it's like we all talk about, it's like we still though try to figure it out, even though that's not the point. It's like the whole point is that we're trying to do that, and it's like, why is it human nature to be like, no, I need to know which one is black and which one is white? Like, it's so interesting.
It's our human curiosity. We want to know like everything.
Yeah. We want to like figure it out.
We want to be like, well, I guessed right.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of generally reading, do you guys have any reading plans for the end of the year, or are you just taking it easy, going by the flow and the mood?
I think it probably is going to be very loose plans, if any. Like, I have things that I'm going to be reading for like book clubs, obviously, and a couple of like review copies. And other than that, I don't know. I'm torn, because on the one hand, it's like if I'm not reading as much as I'd like to be, then I kind of want to leave it open to like just picking up whatever I want. But I also have found that if I'm not reading as much as I want to, but I have no direction, sometimes that can just make it harder to like pick up a book and commit to it and read. So I don't know. I guess my plan is to let myself change my plans if I can.
That's a good plan.
Yeah. I'm kind of just going by mood, because I, wasn't reading for the longest time, and then the last month I feel like I've read more, and it's because and bigger books in some cases, but it's been like completely like, oh, I picked this up and I'm absorbed in it.
Yeah.
And so I have put down a lot of things in the last couple months, and I'm like really giving myself freedom to do that. Just be like, okay, not feeling this one, move on to another one. I have like DNF'd so much, and yeah, I think that has really helped me like not get stuck behind something.
That's good. That's good. I feel like I think last week actually I DNF'd like 3 books, and I felt bad, and then I thought about the fact that they're just not for me right now, and I'm going to the books that will make me happy, and that shouldn't feel bad about that.
Yes.
Yeah, and especially like if it's not one that you plan on getting back to later, that's okay too, of course. But I also have found many times where it was a book that I was like really looking forward to, and I start reading it and I'm not really feeling it. But rather than like pushing myself, I'm like, well, I should still be able to enjoy this. Maybe I'm just not in the mood for it. And I come back to it later and it's like a favorite, you know? So that feels good because it's like, I don't want to push myself into having a disappointing experience when I could enjoy something. So.
And that's actually what happened with me with Raybearer. This time that I finished it was my 4th time starting it, which feels like a lot, but I think I don't always read young adult fantasy. Like I've been finding that a bit of a harder age audience and genre to read lately. So I'd read a couple and then I'd be like, okay, I'm in the mood for YA fantasy. Now I'm going to read Waybearer, and then the mood would just stop immediately, even though I knew that the book was good. And then I don't know what happened this time, like the stars aligned and I managed to catch the mood all the way through, and I just whizzed through it. So
yeah,
and loved it. So
I feel like that with young adult contemporary, that I just, maybe it's because I have like a kid that's a preteen now, like, and acting like a preteen, that I just can't handle the like high school drama. So like if it's fantasy, I can kind of I can do it because I'm like, okay, they're not like, they're dealing with life and death situations and magic and stuff, but like when they're just like doing, and not that they're bad, I mean obviously it's good for high schoolers to read those and like see situations they're going through, but I'm like, oh gosh, I just don't want to.
It's funny because I hear a lot of readers talk about how they want like new adult to be more of a thing outside of strictly like romance, that they want like college aged main characters, and like I think that makes sense. But I have found that for me it's not something I like really want more of, because I think the like specific kind of stress and anxiety, like basically the negative parts of college are still so close to me that I'm like, I do not want to read about that in my free time. Like, even though there were a lot of wonderful things about it as well, and I'm very happy that I went, and like I wouldn't give that experience up, it's like, you know, the conflict is going to be about the bad parts, and I'm like, that's still too close. I can't do that for fun. But like high school, I guess, is like separated enough from my experience that it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why it was separated from me for a long time, and now I'm like approaching having a teenager. So
yeah, you're like, you know, I'm gonna be having this in like just a few years. I don't need to. Yeah,
I don't.
Have you started relating to the parents in the stories?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that's when it's like time to like. I mean, yes, I've DNF'd a couple of young adult, like kind of contemporary romance kind of books, and it's because like I've been like, oh, you guys are so immature, listen to your mom, and I'm like, okay, I just need to stop because this is not for me. Like obviously this has a place and a person that needs this story, but when I start just being like, you're so immature, it's not fair, because that's the whole point of first
They're
love.
Literally immature. They have not finished maturing.
Yeah, and they're supposed to be going through that, and they're supposed to be exploring first love and heartbreak and all of that. So I'm like, okay, just need to put it away.
Yeah,
that is fair. Ellen says they used to be so bad at DNFing, but finally got better because basically all the books I rant about hating, I should have just DNF'd for not being my kind of book, which is fair and valid. And Daniela is... Oh, yes, sorry?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to read Daniela's reading witchy books, and then Christmas books with several reading vlog challenges. And I was going to say same, because my Christmas books pile is slowly been building throughout the year, and I'm very excited to read them.
I know. I have like a few that I have sort of been stockpiling, and I'm very excited. And most of them I'm realizing are like Christmas themed mysteries. So I don't know. I guess that's something I was like thinking I was gonna really be into this holiday season. So let's hope I'm right.
I was gonna say about DNFing that I have found that since I have started DNFing a lot more lately, that my wrap-ups are mostly for 4-star books now. Because I'm just like, anything that's kind of approaching like 2 stars, 3 stars, I'm just putting down. And I love that for myself, that I can like just have solid reads
all the way through. At what point do you tend to DNF, or is it just different points?
It's different. Like this one I just DNF'd, I think I got like 30.
Oh
no,
come back. We missed the answer. I was just finding it very curious because I have started DNFing more, and my ratings do. I feel like I go through phases of like, I'm just DNFing until I find something I'm enjoying, and then some phases where I do stick through stuff, and at the end of the month I'm like, okay, next month you need to do better with DNFing and you're not enjoying it. Oh, Kelly, are you back?
I'm back. My internet decided to do that again.
So what were you saying about DNFing, Kelly?
Oh, it really varies. Sometimes I'm like 2 chapters in and I'm like, no, this is not for me. Other times I'll be like 30%. I think 30% is pretty common for me, because at that point you've given it a chance. Like I can like tell I'm just not getting on with it. But I had a book I read, started 2 months ago. I got 80% of the way through that book and I have not picked it up in 2 months. And I'm like, I kind of think I'm done. Like I keep saying, oh, I'm gonna go back. It's not that much longer, but I'm like, I just don't care.
And you use the library a lot, but have you noticed it impacting like book buying or anything?
No, because I feel like I've been very much more judicial about what I like buy now, and only buy things that I'm like really excited about. So I've kind of stopped just going into like thrift stores and buying like, oh, I've heard of this, I'll get it. Like I really am like, I'm going to go to my local bookstore and I'm seeking out this specific book. Or like, you know, like I bought Jordan Ifueko's new book because I'm like, loved Ray Bear. I'm going to buy this. I mean, I don't know that necessarily I'm going to love it, but from history, I like Jordan Ifueko. So like I've just been a lot more disciplined in what I pick up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think so. I don't DNF super often for like various reasons. Some of them are more like reviewing related, where unless it's like something I feel is genuinely like unhealthy for me to keep reading, a lot of times I'm like, well, I want to be able to like review the whole thing and be like, it did not get better. Here's why. But another reason that I don't DNF super often, even when I'm like, I am not liking this, is that I am stubborn. And I'm like, I'm at least gonna count this freaking book for my Goodreads challenge, like, which is not a healthy way to approach reading, and I don't recommend that to people. But that's just who I am. I'm like, I at least am going to get like some productivity out of this negative experience.
How do you get yourself to read those books, though? Because I have a really hard time once I set it down because I'm not enjoying it, like making myself read it, even if it's for like a book group or something. Like, how do you make yourself finish it?
So this is not like a recommendation on how people should read, but if it's one where for whatever reason I'm like, I do want to finish this even though I'm not enjoying it, a lot of times what I'll end up doing is like, I sort of think of it in like small chunks. So I'll read like a couple chapters and then I'll go do something that I need to do, or I'll do something fun, or like I'll do some cleaning that I need to or whatever, and I'll just like space it out enough where, and especially because like if there's something that I've been putting off working on, then I'm like, wow, this is going to feel like a break compared to reading the book that I don't want to read, or vice versa. It's like, you know, sometimes if it's a task I really don't want to do, I'm like, well, I'm at least like gonna go and read this book that I want to finish. So again, not like a super positive way to view reading, and most of the books I read, I obviously am reading because I enjoy them or I think I'll enjoy them. But there are times when, for whatever reason, I'm like, no, I'm committed to finishing this book. And so I sort of like, I basically assign it to myself in a way that doesn't feel like really annoying, because I'm like interspersing it with other things. And yeah, and sometimes I'm like, oh, with this I'll be able to like finish this in just a few days, and then it takes me like 2 weeks, but I do finish it. So
I feel like often I end up switching to audiobook if my library has it, because I don't really want to buy it at that point. But yeah,
that's what I did with the last book that I gave 2 stars, and I would have DNF, but it was in a series, and I really wanted to get to the next book in the series because I thought I would like it better. I just like got the audiobook and turned it up higher than I normally do, and I was like, okay, we're just gonna get through this.
Yeah, actually, like, so the last book that I gave a really low rating to, it was one that Huck and I were buddy reading, and we both went into it thinking we would like it, obviously. And she actually DNF'd it. She's like, I feel bad that I'm like bailing on you. I was like, no, it's fine. Like, I am weird and I want to like finish it, so you're okay. But I did actually end up being glad I finished it, because like some of the stuff that happened in the last part of the book, I'm like, I think this is something that people should be aware of before they like pick this up. And also, it was like wild to me. This is like I think fairly well-known and well-loved fantasy series, and it just got like a nice new cover reprint. So like the fact that there were like publishers and editors who like looked at this book and they were like, this holds up, is very strange to me. like the fact that it was one of those books where you get to like an incest plot line and you're like, another one? Unfortunate. Yeah.
Not great.
That's how I felt about the Once and Future King. I got to like this. Was it the second one? You know, because it's like a collection of 4. When I got to the second one, I was like, why is this so famous? I'm like, it's so terrible, like what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's cringe. We have a question from Daniela. If anybody has queer Christmas recommendations.
I know. I mean, I haven't read it, but Ashley Herring Blake has a new Christmas book out. Romance.
I want to read that, actually. I want to read some Ashley Herring Blake. I can't remember what it's called. There's one that's by Rowan Parrish, and actually it's just by Rowan Parrish. I think it's called The Holiday Trap. Yes, which is based on the rom-com, the Christmas rom-com that's really famous. I think The Holiday?
Yeah.
The Holiday, where they end up switching houses, and it's queer. I think there's an MM relationship and a FF one. And that's pretty cute. I like that one.
I'm trying to think, like, I'm still relatively new to reading like Christmassy books, so I don't know that I have a wide recommendations pool to draw from.
Yeah, I don't really read much Christmas.
I just do it every December. As long as there's books that are new, that are Christmas or new to me, I will do it. I actually just thought of another one, which is by Juno Dawson. Oh, I struggle to remember the titles, but that one was really good, and it had a lot of drama in it. And
I was gonna say, I think your review and maybe Aoife's put that one on my list. I'm like, this sounds like an interesting time. Like,
it was really good. It was fun. It had lots of sibling vibes and a lot of like talking about the family and tradition. Like, I think a lot of Christmases that people have are built on traditions, and sometimes those traditions are really hard to let go of if they're not working for you. And I really like that it kind of discussed that and had a bit more of a serious tone while also just being like this is some romantic drama here and some fun family traditions here, and yeah, very good. It's called Stay Another Day. I just looked it up, so I also recommend that one. But otherwise, I can't think of any. I'm gonna try and read the Sarah Simone Christmas one, which who knows what that could be. It could have polyamory, but we'll find out. And Owen Colfer has a Christmas book that I want to read.
Yeah, that's right. I read that one this last year.
Was it good?
I was kind of let down by it, but it wasn't bad. And I also I recognize that with the amount of time that I have been rereading and loving the Artemis Fowl books, it's hard to go into one of his books and not think about that. Yeah, I'd be very curious, Olivia Savannah, if you do end up reading that one, what you think of it. Because it also, there were some parts of it where I'm like, this is not, bad. It's just not the kind of, Christmas story that I usually go for. For whatever reason, I don't usually gravitate to ones that have, a sort of Santa Claus character. That's just not something that I, read about, even though, I see it in movies and it's fine. So, I don't know. I think it was a me thing for some of it, at least.
Interesting. Okay, I will find out. I do also love Artemis Fowl, so and I didn't love the Fowl twins, so I've had struggles with it.
Yeah, I am very glad that I did not pick up that sequel series. Even though I have some friends who have really been loving it, which is great, but I just don't have any interest in it.
That is, I think that's the right choice. Then I need to read the new AHB. Oh, Ashley Herring Break. I enjoyed Nicky Mine this Christmas. I like the idea of Christmas mysteries because I always pick up a couple of romances but get bored after a couple of them in a row. Yeah, that's fair. That's why I mixed up with middle grade as well.
Yeah. I have started the last few years giving one of the things that I get from my mom around Christmas time is a Christmas themed murder mystery book, and I tease her that she likes cozy seasonal murders, but she's got,
nothing like a seasonal murder.
That's right. That's right. A nice wholesome Christmas murder.
Perfect. Yes, go read Stay Another Day. Someone else snatched that one copy of the Sarah Simone book from the secondhand store. And I can report back and say if it's good. Also, speaking of middle grade, as you are both middle grade readers, do you have any key middle grade recs that I should be checking out? Because I've been slacking on my middle grade game lately.
Love that question. Let me ask Goodreads.
Trying to think of what I've. It's bad I can't remember what I've been reading lately.
I'm like, what books have I read recently? Well, okay, so Olivia Savannah, I don't know if you read. I know you've read some middle grade nonfiction. I don't know if that's something that you are actively interested. But the History Smashers series, I think the illustrator is Kate Messner, and there's different authors, but it's really, really good. And I think it's it's interesting, and I still learn things even as an adult, but I also really love the way that for the intended audience, they're doing such a great job of introducing kids to how we talk about history and how we look at sources, and how one thing that really stuck out to me is one of the books is on the Underground Railroad, or maybe it's about slavery more generally. I don't remember, but one of the things that it talks about is there's been stories in the US for a long time about African Americans having quilts that they would use to give directions about how to escape. And that's a thing that has been talked about and handed down in families, that information. And I thought that the book did such a good job of saying we don't have documentation of this. but that doesn't mean that this is not part of their family histories. Like, it could have been like an isolated thing, or it could have been something where, like, obviously you wouldn't want to have like physical records of these kinds of things. And so that's one of the things about history that can make it hard, is like when you're looking at oral traditions, we have to sort of like keep in mind, like, okay, maybe this means that it didn't happen in the way that people think, but it also could just be something that wasn't documented the way the historians want it to be, you know? So just like stuff like that, I think it does a really good job of like talking about those things with kids in a way that is like not talking down to them, you know? And it's, yeah, so I really love that series. Let's see, what else have I read recently?
I'm gonna have to check that out. The covers remind me of Horrible Histories a bit.
Yeah. I read Before the Ever After by Jacqueline Woodson, who I just always love. And that was fantastic.
I'd read that a couple years ago. That was really good.
Yeah, it was really good.
My daughter and I, who is sneaking in over here, we had read when we were on a road trip, The Last Fallen Star and The Last Fallen Moon. She's giving a thumbs up. And those were really good. They're based on Korean mythology, but there's like really awesome like adoption rep and like sisterly relationships and stuff. So
nice. By Gracie Kim?
Yes. We haven't finished the third one yet. We need to get around to that, but we read the first two and they were very good.
Yeah, that's one I definitely want to get to. Also, me and Julia just recently finished our read-along of the Giver series by Lois Lowry, which I had never read before, and it was so good. So that's like one of the more, I guess, famous middle grade books I've read recently. But
I remember reading that in school and thinking, oh, this is like a fantastic idea. And then I read Gathering Blue, I think is one of the sequels. But that was a very long time ago, and I don't remember that one as distinctly, but I definitely remember reading The Giver, and I think I did a little presentation on it.
Oh yeah, they're like the 4 books in the series are extremely different from each other. So I think in a way, I think it's good that I maybe like I didn't really have any idea what they were going to be about besides like the premise, the very basic premise of The Giver, because they are so different. But I really, really loved that series.
I also, because I always like creepy middle grade, I had read 13s by Kate Alice Marshall, and I liked that one. Need to read the second one.
For some reason, I had forgotten that she wrote a middle grade one, so I might have to try that.
Yeah, it's like where there's a girl who moves back to like her mother leaves, and so she has to go live with her aunt in a town that has like children go missing every 13 years, and it's always 3 13-year-olds, and then she's turning 13 and is meeting 2 other almost 13-year-olds, and yeah, so it was fun, slightly creepy,
Nice. I feel like I need to read more creepy middle grade. I haven't been great at that. I feel like I've read like 2 or 3. So that's nice. I still want to read that Catherine Arden Small Spaces series. I need to get
I really loved that one as well. I was just thinking, I'm like, I kind of want to reread the first couple books because we're getting into those seasons and like the cold weather, and I don't know, like I might pick those up for a reread. The vibes are just on point.
Ellen, remembering when she did a presentation on Artemis Fowl in school.
I love that. I would love to give a presentation. I would do that now. I just show up to an auditorium. It's like, hello, this is my TED Talk.
I have not read Artemis Fowl because that would have been after my childhood. So I missed that, but I have a picture book by Ian Colfer called Cloud Babies that is really good.
I have to check that out. I've been enjoying reading picture books more this year. I do have a nephew to read them to now, which is nice, even though he doesn't understand anything yet. But that does not stop me from reading picture books with him. So it's been fun to like revisit the old ones that I used to read and then see all these like fantastic new ones that are coming out too.
Yeah, I would recommend that one. She has me read it all the time. She really likes it.
And my last question, because we've passed now, but we'll look to for a little bit longer, is what is something that you're looking forward to? It doesn't have to be books related, just something you're looking forward to that's in the imminent future. Can be small thing as well, doesn't have to be a big thing.
That's a really good question. I am really looking forward to getting some rain. Because where I live, usually we get the majority of our rainfall in like the winter months, and it's my favorite kind of weather. And it just like makes everything extra cozy. And I know that there's a lot of people dealing with like extreme, like rain and flooding and everything. So obviously that is different. But for where I'm at, that would be a really nice treat to have some grass that's the right color. Amazing.
Yeah. How about you, Kelly?
I'm going on a quilting retreat next weekend.
Oh, nice.
So I'm excited about that. It's 4 days. And I've done this one before. It's like mostly retired ladies and me. and like we go to this camp. And so the room where they put us to quilt like has these humongous windows, like floor to ceiling, 2-story windows that look out over a lake and forest, and it's really beautiful. We go on like some walks and stuff and then just quilt all day.
That sounds awesome.
That sounds really nice. And I am looking forward to tomorrow afternoon, because when I get back from church, like I'm not leaving the flat, and I just feel like I'm a homebody at heart, but I spend a lot of time not in my home lately. So I'm very much looking forward to just like having a whole afternoon here, having no plans and just being inside.
I actively love not going places, so I feel you.
Seeing how people are doing. Daniela finished crafting, meal plan, and online grocery order, which takes some crafting sometimes. So
it does, yeah.
I think this is a response to your quilting retreat, Kelly. Oh, that sounds wonderful. As we're rounding up, do you want to share how your crafting progress has gone in this past hour?
Yeah. So I always think about this after I do like a crafting sprint. I should have put a little like clip-on progress keeper so I could actually see how much I've gotten done. But I didn't. But I still feel pretty good about how much I did, and I can tell because I only have this much yarn left, and it was a little bit bigger than that when I started. So I will be very excited to get onto the like top part, like the front and the back, because I feel like a lot of times when I'm knitting, it's like if I go from something that's like very intricate, like one of the other patterns I'm working on right now, I love doing it, but it's like a lot more like counting and like focused and everything. And so I feel like a lot of times when I'm knitting and I go from something like that to this, I'm like, oh, this is so nice and relaxing and I don't have to think about it. And then there's like a few rows later and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to do something more interesting. So I'm getting to the interesting part, which is good.
Can you show me your colors again? Because I was looking down.
Yeah, I really like it. It's like light blue and then there's a lot of like green on it. And I really like how the stitch pattern is coming out, because so I hate doing ribbing. I don't know, Kelly, if you like, I know you've done it for your hat. The reason I hate ribbing is because like I feel like it is like boring and repetitive, but it's not like easy for me because I feel like, you know, you're having to constantly switch the yarn back and forth and everything, but it's important because it helps garments fit. So like there's no way to not do ribbing. And so I was kind of bummed when I was starting on this pattern and I was like, oh no, like every other row is basically a ribbing row. But having just like that one row in between that is like just knit, it has been helping a lot. And I do like how it's looking. So anyway, that was a very long answer for your question.
No, no. I like it. I like the sea green colors as well. They look really nice.
Yeah.
I can't remember how big this was when I started, but
it's good.
Definitely not to 6 inches yet, but making progress.
Yeah. And I really love the yarn that you're using, Kelly, like the dark jewel tones.
Yeah. I have a cowl I had started in the spring. Let me see if I have it in here. That was the same yarn. So when I started this hat, I was like, oh, then I can have the match. Yeah. So this,
yeah.
I realized how much looser this is because it's a much bigger needle.
Yeah.
But
do you do more than one project at a time?
Well, this one I had started in the spring, and then I basically didn't knit all of summer. And then I was like, well, I want to take this hat class. So I just haven't gone back to that one. So I'll get back to it.
Nice. And I painted my little sunset. So it looks like a flag from here, but I'm just going to write something on it. I need to decide what I'm going to write, if I'm going to write a quote or not.
That's so cute.
And then I was just playing around with the paints.
Yeah. And I always love seeing like people actually use the like fun things that they get in like you know, like review packages or something. Like I think that's cool.
Yeah, well, that was my sprint. Ellen finished coloring in the branches, so has only used one color so far, and will probably continue for a bit while listening to an audiobook. Yeah, audiobook and coloring is nice. But with that, we've reached the end of this crafting session. So thank you so much to Kelly and Cara for joining me, and make sure you check out both of their channels as well. And yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for joining. And we will have more reading sprints happening for Gothtober. I don't think Hannah's doing sprints tomorrow because I know she's traveling, but I think the next one's on Tuesday on this channel. I think so. I think that's right. But yes, see you and have a very good evening. Goodbye.